$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your hosts, Soulblazer and George.
Hello, everybody. This is the Super NES Podcast, episode number 139. I am Greg. He is George. This is very deja vu.
It's like we've done this before, but I
Yeah.
can't. It just seems so weird.
Yes. So welcome back, George.
I am actually the evil twin.
I'd mentioned in a previous episode that George and I had already planned to do a game before George decided he needed to step down for time reasons, and this is that game. So we're just doing it a little bit sooner than expected, but that's cool. So that means George is making a return to the podcast sooner than expected, which is fine.
I'm taking over this podcast now. I'm going to slay you, Greg. I'll steal your soul.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yes.
Because you play as the villain in this game. Yeah, you're I'm the dark half. Ah, I said it. I said the name.
One of the characters you play, is evil, so that's that's true. But anyway,
this is actually like a fairly creative game.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Which game do you want to come back to the podcast for to talk about, George?
Dark half.
Dark Half, yes. If you've not heard this game, don't feel bad because I hadn't heard of it either. This was another Japanese-only game that George likes to, quote unquote inflict on us. So
yeah, I want you to play good games. What? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what to make of this game. This is a weird game. Very easy to see.
It's weird because it's like so simplistic too.
In
but
some
it's
ways,
like
yes.
complex at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
I can also see why this, it's also very easy to see why this game did not come here in the West because, oh boy, there's some themes. There's some themes going on.
You murder innocent people.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, nowadays they probably would do it without a problem, but
nowadays murder is all right.
Yeah, but anyway, so the developer of this game is actually you may not have heard the developer, but if I mention the games they worked on, they'll probably click. The developer of this game is a company called West One, which is apparently still active, according to the research I can find on it. Yes, they released a game as recently as last year. So,
what game is that?
Well, I'll tell you in a moment.
Okay. I gotta wait.
Their roots go back to 1986, and if I mention some of the games they worked on, I'm sure they're probably ring bells in your head. They developed Wonder Boy, like the arcade, and also for the Sega Master System.
Nah, never heard of it.
They developed Jaws, like the NES, which I happen to kind of like that game actually. It's pretty fun.
Don't know what that is.
They developed all the Wonder Boy games. They developed, what else did they develop here that's pretty well known? Some of the Monster World games they developed. They developed Dungeon Explorer, like the Sega CD, which was an early, which was an early pseudo 3D-ish dungeon game. So, they developed a bunch of most of their games were Japan, but I'm just looking at the ones that came out in North America. Oh, they developed a fishing game for Dreamcast.
Well done.
They worked on one of the Princess Maker games. Have you heard about that series, George?
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but they developed a and their most recent game was the ones who developed the Sega Ages Wonder Boy game for the Switch.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah.
But, so mostly known for the Wonder Boy games.
Some good stuff.
But yeah, they have done some good stuff. But they, and this game was published by Enix, of course, which was which is one of the two big go-to companies for RPG games in the 90s. So that kind of makes sense that they published this. So, but anyway, this is a very kind of hard game to describe in a summary, because it's like it's an RPG, but it's a very odd RPG for several reasons. One of which is that you actually control two characters in this game. Like you go back and forth between them. There's a heroic knight named Rhoda, and the other one's a demon named Rukyu, who people also call Satan. So again,
I wonder why.
Yes.
Hold on a second though. Like, I feel like when you get to like the save or load screen or whatever, like I feel like that has like a really nice feeling to it. Do you remember what the saving and loading screen is?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can try to find a picture of it.
It's what is it called? The candlestick thing.
Oh, right, okay.
It's got the three candles.
Yep.
And when you're saving, you light the candle, and the candle is lit when you load the game, and I think that's really nice. It's so strange that a lot of these Japanese games have such an aesthetic that you don't really get in a lot of games that come over here.
Right.
Like, actually, take a look at Super Mario RPG. Super Mario RPG has a totally different save load screen for the Japanese version,
really,
compared to the North American release.
No, I did not know that.
Take a look at it, Greg. I actually really like it. It's a shame that they removed it. I don't know why. There might be a good reason, but a lot of the it's really nice to find a Japanese game that never came out over here, and you look at it and it's just so beautiful. Like this game with the main, basically what I guess what you could call the main menu with the candles, and that's how you save and load. It looks very nice, and just the game in general looks pretty good too.
Yeah. There are a few games I can think about that did small things for saving loading screens. For example, maybe the character turns her head or makes a motion or whatnot. But yeah, that kind of thing is pretty rare. So this is an isometric game. The game's kind of played kind of top down, feel kind of little bit pseudo 3D effect. Angled game screen. So very similar to Super Mario RPG, kind of similar to that. It also kind of similar to a what's that big series that Atlas put out for the system? I'm drawing a blank on the name of the game. To recover one of the Tactics Org.
You mean Tactics Ogre?
Yes. Sorry, I was trying to remember the name of that game. So, but so some other unique things this game has. The two characters are connected to each other in a couple ways. One is that if one of them dies, the game ends. Period. So you have to go back to a save screen. So, got to be careful about that. Two, they're both fueled by soul power, which is a very interesting mechanic that this game has. I guess you can think of it I guess you can think of it as your energy force. It's not your hit it's not your hit points, because your hit points are separate, but just like it's kind of like an energy force the character has that decreases as you walk around. There's a meter top of the screen that shows you what it is, and it increases when you kill enemies. And until power ever reaches 0, the game ends. So,
yes, it's not just walking around that decreases it; it's also actions in battle.
Yes.
So if you get your soul power back, you have to kill enemies.
Yeah.
Yes. So. Yeah. You have to win. You have to kill enemies. But then on top of that, when you are playing as the villain, you can just suck up people's life force.
Yeah, that's true. That makes it
in
easier.
the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, I never if you're aware of that factor, it's not that hard to plan around it. I never died because I never died in this game because the power ran out. But it's a very interesting concept to have in a game. I'm kind of I think the main reason the developer put it in here was because they're trying to encourage the player not to skip battles. they actually want you to actually fight battles and to actually do some mandatory grinding in this game. So, and that's like one way to encourage a player to do that. I understand. So I understand why it's here. I don't know what I think about the concept. I mean, because it's kind of on the plus side. Yes, it is nice to be able to be able to level up at a pretty steady rate. Because of that factor driving to do so. On the other hand, I don't like games forcing you to do things like that. So it
kind of sucks because if you get lost, you're wasting a bunch of soul power and you might screw yourself over.
Emulation helps in that big time because if you're not sure about going a route, just save the game in an emulator and give it a shot. And if you and if you're in the wrong, go back and try it again. So
also your saving is limited to like when you get to a save point and you save, that's it. Yeah, that's your save point. You can't go back to it. It disappears.
Yeah, which is also a very frustrating mechanic. So I mean, like, again, it's not unique. There are some other games I played before in the past that do things like that, but
weird. So are you telling me that this is a Japanese game?
It's very Japanese. I mean, we've already mentioned some of the themes that this game has. So yeah, it's like, but yeah, you already mentioned the graphics, like we'll talk about that like a bit more. Yeah, I mean, like this game, I forgot to mention when this game came out. This game, this game was released in Japan in May 1996. So like a pretty late Super NES game.
PlayStation was already out.
Yeah, so like, so because of that, the graphics of the game are very good. I mean, the characters. The character models, I think they could have done a little bit better on the detail, but they are like very large and defined and colorful. So, we'll get into that.
I think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like it's almost like a mix of like realistic and chibi in a sense. Chibi being
exactly.
Like what is it? It's like like deformed. It's kind of like cutesy, kind of deformed,
right?
Kind of looking like it's kind of like a hybrid of that. That's what it looks like to me, and I think it does pretty well.
Yeah. No, I agree. The dungeons are, of course, dungeons. I make like they're bland, but like for dungeons, that's what you expect. So,
you kind of just have flavor of the week,
right?
Is it stone or underground? Are you in a cave or whatever?
There's a good mix of enemies though, and like the enemies themselves are pretty well defined. But so like you only have some battles you fight only by yourself. Other battles you have like companions with you, or like maybe summon monsters at your side or whatnot. So you can have a max of correct me if I'm wrong, George, 4 support characters with you like at one time, I think.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so 5 people total on the screen. So it's like
it's a good idea to do that with the villain, because
much easier.
Yeah, the only attack you have as a villain is to cast spells, and that costs soul points, whatever the heck it is.
There's no.
It costs your soul power,
right? Because there's no MP in this game, so that kind of I said actually MP as well. So
whereas the hero of this game can use swords and stuff like that.
Yep.
The villain only uses spells, so it is good to have like a full party and then just back out for a little bit,
right?
So you can conserve your soul power and just gain some from when your teammates or your party members, whatever, kill the enemies for you.
Right. So the screen effect when you go into battle is like a nice touch. It looks pretty good. So battles themselves are kind of done in an isometric, kind of almost kind of like a grid way, in the sense that your party's on one side of the screen, the enemies are on the other side. So
it's kind of like a turn-based tactical.
Yes. Yep.
Where you're selecting grid spots where to move and where to attack.
Right. So I mean, because even your combat commands with when you're playing Rukyu, the evil guy, are different than most games, because your command screen in battle is like soul, watch, and retreat. And it's like, the first time playing it, you're like, what the heck are these for? So, but, it's a very different, different feeling game. So, because, the translation makes some curious choices, I think, as far as like, font colors and whatnot. So I think some of the, some of the colors I think are a little bit harder to read than to read because of that. And also because of the fact that they had to translate this game from Japanese, they shipped from Japanese. The in the combat screen, it's like you can see your character's hit points, but you can't see your character's max hit points. Whereas your summon monsters, you can see their max hit points. So I'm guessing that's because of the space limitations available to them when they were translating it. If I had to guess.
I think that might be a different thing because I feel like your max hit points are basically your current hit points, because I noticed when you're the villain, every battle I went through I would gain like 2 hit points, so I would just keep accumulating hit points every battle I finished, and I would get like 2 or 3 or whatever. So I think the max HP is whatever HP you currently have.
Okay, yeah.
Compared to your teammates or
that
party
may be
members,
the case.
whatever.
I honestly didn't notice that. So because
because every battle I went through, it was always increasing my health.
So yeah, it's kind of strange then. That's a very unique system. It does that because like I'm aware of some games that do, because I'm aware of some games that there's just like aware of some games that do similar things. Final Fantasy II, for example, you don't live up in that game, and the like you gain hit points like being hit by enemies. But this game,
that game is a super cheese fest though.
Yes, yeah.
Put on 2 shields and just attack your teammate.
Yeah. So
yeah.
but in this game, I think you just gain hit points as long as you win battle successfully. So so interesting concept. But like I said, this game's very unique in a lot of ways. So, so what are some of the other ways that this is unique? You need to check the walls a lot in this game because there's lots of hidden stuff. I mean, like a lot of games you're humping walls, but in this game you're like really humping walls.
Yep, I humped a wall so hard I died.
Let's see. The spell list is pretty good as far as the actual spells you have available to you. I mean, they're standard spells that you'll recognize from the games. Like that point, they're both like you have your basic healing spells, attack spells, defense spells, that kind of stuff. So
right, and it's interesting because the different spells work differently, kind of. So like the fire spell only has like so much range you can do, and then like the lightning spell only has so much range you can do, and it kind of varies. But what you want to do is kind of like be efficient enough that you're using some soul power but not too much, and you're also trying to kill as many enemies as possible when you're using spells. Otherwise, I'd just say rush in with a sword and just kill everything.
Well, that's actually a good segue, because I was going to ask you. We already talked about the 2 characters like a little bit. Rukyu is very unique because of his ability to be able to summon monsters and make enemies join his side, and his magic powers and whatnot. Like you said, like you mentioned before, like can't directly attack. But I'm curious to see what you. Well, I'm curious to hear, because obviously, where's this podcast? I can't see. I'm curious to hear what you think about the difference between them, because it's like, I did not like Rhoda very much. I thought, to be honest, I thought he sucked. He's not that strong. He's not that useful. I mean, Riku's a lot more useful, useful in combat situations.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be very powerful, so there's going to be a huge difference in power between the hero and the villain. But yeah, I think being able to use the sword and not use much soul power, like being able to reserve it and just attack physically, is nice. I guess you would have to just grind him up to be decently powerful, though. Get new I think equipment is a very big thing in this game. Getting new equipment is something that'll help a lot. But yeah, I think the villain is just supposed to be completely overpowered, so I guess that kind of makes sense that you would prefer to use him, because he's just easier to play as.
Yeah. There's also one other interesting difference between them. Being a bad guy, Ruki's not interested in chests, so he can't open them. Whereas, which is very strange. But it's like he has that very like funny message, I have no use for useless babbles.
Yeah.
So yeah, and because of his limitations, Rhoda really depends upon his items a lot. The stuff you find in the chest to boost your stats are critical. So
yeah, I think part of the reason why he doesn't want to pick up anything in a chest is because if you did that, I think you would screw yourself over on the other side. Playing as a hero when you swap over to him.
I guess that's a good way of looking at it. So
yeah,
I mean, let's see, what else would you say is like pretty, is pretty unique or stands out like this game, George?
When you kill innocent people.
Oh yes, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Do you like killing innocent people, Greg?
Not usually, but I mean, like,
not usually. Hold on. There is a scenario where you enjoy killing people. That's unsettling.
It kind of depends upon the game itself, because like certain games get you the mindset of like that kind of slaughter is expected. Like a GTA game, for example. I mean, like, of course you're gonna kill like a whole bunch of people. Like like it was part and parcel of the game. In a game like this, for example, especially if you're going to a blind...
Greg as a psychopath? Go on.
But going this game blind, you may not realize that you're playing half the game as like like an evil guy. So it's like the first time that happens, it can be like pretty upsetting.
My favorite part is when you talk to the first person, like in a town, as the villain, and it's like, oh, we're gonna get some dialogue out of this, and no, you basically just straight up murder him and suck his power, and he turns to dust or bones or whatever. And I think this game does like a really good job of setting up like how bad this character really is, because you yourself are even doing it. It's not a cutscene or anything. It's not something you sit there and watch. You are actively going out there and killing these people,
right?
And it's a strange feeling. It's kind of like I don't know if it's a necessary thing to do, but it kind of reminds me of, and this is probably not something that everyone has played, but it's kind of like, it kind of gives me a vibe of to a lesser extent, if you've played, what was it, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, was it? I think it was Modern Warfare 2, where there's legitimately a scene that you play through where you're walking through a Russian airport gunning down civilians.
Okay.
It gives me like a slight feeling of that, in a sense where, like, if this game did come out over here and we played it around the time it came out, it'd be like, oh gee, like wow, you're slaughtering innocent people. It's insane.
They'd have to change that in some way, because it's like they,
you give them candy and they float to heaven.
Like I mentioned before, like this game
They
also
would probably change it to like you screaming at them and then they run away or something, and that empowers you.
Also,
that's probably how they would change it.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the overall plot of this game is pretty dark too. I mean, like like when it came out, it's pretty heavy stuff. So, because it's like, because you're doing when you're playing the bad guy, like you're doing bad things, trying to get to the, you're trying to earn toward like a bad goal. So it's like, so it's a pretty, because you just didn't play as evil guys back then very much. I mean, like, I mean, one of the early games I think about was Dungeon Master. Dungeon Keeper, like for the computer.
Yes.
Which was about.
But that was like, Yeah, but that was nothing like this, you know,
Oh, yeah,
where
sure.
you were taking care of your dungeon and everything. Sure, you know, you're an evil person. That was kind of more cartoony. I mean, you could argue that this is kind of like cartoonish in a sense as well, but it's, you know, you're going around actually slaughtering people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure the media around the era of this game coming out would have fun with this game.
oh yeah,
if it came out over here like just the same way.
right. I mean, you know, the game did review, did review and sell pretty well in Japan when it came out, but
Oh yeah, it's a Japanese ass game.
right, yep. But yeah, yeah, exactly.
Kind of almost in the same vein as Shin Megami Tensei that we covered how
Sure.
many millions of years ago?
a while ago.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, except that game was like, hey, here's your dog. Oh, whoops, you fused your dog into a monster and created this horrible being that is now something that you can use to help you fight.
Right.
It's just like it's insane how different like games were between the US and Japan in this era.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The games that
So,
we wouldn't get.
Yep. But it, but it is kind of interesting how the two characters, how the two main characters in the game, like interact with each other. I mean, like you don't directly, I mean, they don't directly cross paths. At least, at least
Far as I got, they haven't, but I'm sure they do towards
well, they
the
do
end.
eventually at the end of the game. I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
for most of the game, you don't. However, you actually. However, Falco will often clean up the mess that Ruka made by examining corpses or whatnot, which is actually critical toward
Right.
the ending of the game because
Right.
you have to because you have to get an item called Raise a Hope from examining some of the corpses that that Ruku killed. I mean, you need that for the ending. So it's actually very important to do that. But yeah, so it's like interesting. It's like here's a bad guy who's tore away through a dungeon, and then the good guy comes in maybe a couple of days later. And just like, what the heck happened here? So, but
I don't know how the ending plays out, but wouldn't it be crazy to have a game where you play as the hero and the villain at the same time, you're leveling up and everything, and then at the end you're still playing as both of them? What would you do? Would you try to fight yourself, or would you just let one side win, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, so one of the since the game was translated several years ago, with Super NES, there have been some Westerners who have given reviews of the game now, and and the game reviews pretty well. I mean, the average rating of people who play the game, mind you, the sample's not as big as it was from these games because not as many people play the game, of course. But for the people for the folks who have reviewed it, the average of the game is about the average of the game is about 4 out of 5 stars. So I mean, one of the reviewers made the comment that I agree with a lot, that this game's kind of like what happened if Stephen King and the Christian Bible got mixed together.
Okay, I like that.
So
I
it's
like that.
Yeah, I do like too, because I'm thinking about going there's some very Stephen King-ish stuff going on here in this game, isn't there? So, but
I think I would give this a 3.5 out of 5, because it's just the soul power, I think, is just a little too difficult of a mechanic.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
as far as the overall gameplay went, I thought this game was tough, but not too tough. If that makes sense. I mean,
it's not difficult. The only problem I really had with the game is the whole soul power system. It's a cool system.
Yeah.
But you get lost and that's it. you might as well just, delete the game, or if you have a reproduction, rip it out of your console and throw it out the window. You might as well just put it away for a month and come back and be like, all right, let's try to figure out where I need to go again. And then you'll probably just run out of power again.
Right.
I don't know. That's kind of the experience that I had, was all right, I'm completely lost. I don't know where to go, and I'm out of soul power. Great. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, so yeah, very interesting like that way. Yeah, I thought the game was a little bit harder than some Western RPGs, but not the hardest RPG game.
Is it harder than Mystic Quest?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Are you sure? I don't know. That was the hardest game I've ever played.
I'd say this game is probably even harder than Final Fantasy VI, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that. Like, I'm trying to reassemble what I've played of Final Fantasy VI, and
But not as hard as Final Fantasy V.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Final Fantasy V is like every time you make a turn, it's like, oh, here's a boss that's 50 levels above you. Oh, great.
So I mean, like the length of the game, based upon readers' comments looking at videos on YouTube, the length of the game is not that bad for an RPG. I mean, like
I think it's decently short, right?
Yeah, I mean, like
it's not like too short, but
right. Averaging out these videos, it looks like the game's about like 30 hours, like give or take. So
okay, that's like an average length of these games from that era.
Sure, exactly. So,
yeah.
But since you always ask about this, there is a speedrun of the game out there just under 4 hours.
Yeah, I saw that. Interesting.
I don't think they were using cheats. I don't think
cheating's typically not allowed in a speedrun.
Well, I mean, it's fine as long as you disclose it. I mean, you have to say, like these tools were used.
Depends on what it is. If you really want to get into it, there are some communities that allow certain things, like BioShock Infinite. They actually make it mandatory to use like a specific mod for the game that makes it so that there's 100% chance of collecting like a certain item because it's part of the speed run. And if you don't get it within like the first time of trying to find it or whatever, the whole run's automatically over. So there's kind of like stuff like that, from what I understand, that lets you mod or kind of like cheat in a sense.
Right. Okay. No, I can see that. But
yeah.
But yeah, we haven't. I guess the last thing to talk about is the music. Like pretty good soundtrack. I mean, it's very very fitting for the game.
It's a Japanese Super Famicom game, so there's a decent chance that the music's pretty good.
I mean, Enix games don't get as much credit as Squaresoft games as far as the soundtracks go, but Enix games usually have a pretty good music.
Yes, I mean, I would argue that Square games still have better music, but Enix games still blow a lot of other games out of the water when it comes to music. Yeah,
sure. But
hey, those two companies should get together at some point.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything for this game as far as like major things. I did not get as far in this game as I wanted to. I did not
either. I kept getting lost.
Yeah.
I died.
Yeah, I liked it though. I'll probably go back to it. So
yeah, I'd like to get back to it. I still have other SNES games that I need to get around to, and also with doing PlayStation Power and everything, that's very time consuming.
You have to, you have to have patience for a game like this. I mean, like, if you enjoy obscure, weird Japanese RPGs, this game's right up your alley.
Me.
Yes, obviously we know that. So
I hate myself so much that so Disgaea, like the first Disgaea on PS2, I think hate myself. Yeah, I hate myself so much that I did a bunch of grinding on that game, and I still haven't gone through like chapter 2 or whatever.
Oh geesh.
Yeah, that game's actually pretty difficult compared to the newer ones in the series.
Right.
Yeah.
I could see that. Sure. So
yeah, that first game's pretty hard actually.
So pricing for this game on eBay is always a little bit more difficult with those Japanese games, because it's like you have to look at like number of factors. First off, there are some copies of the game available here in North America. but most of them are being sold by Japanese sellers, which you pay more money for, but it's not that much more. Obviously, if you're willing to wait for the longer shipping time, you can certainly save some money that way if you want to. Second of all, repros of this game are available. They made some. There are some pretty nice looking repros of this game available, which again, as typical of repros, will look and feel like a game was actually released here in the States. Label, like a North American cart, a label that makes it look like the game, using artwork that might have been used been used if the game was released over here. The typical North American markings on it, that kind of stuff. So, and of course the repos are going to be more expensive because the work that was done in putting and translating and taking the translated raw and putting it onto the cart and the cart and assembling and that kind of stuff. So, all those factors applied. This game's not super common on eBay, which you can't find a copy of it. There are 14 copies of this game for sale currently, in all flavors. When I looked recently, and 7 copies of the game had recently sold. If you want the card, like you want a card of the Japanese Super Famicom release only. If you're willing to Japanese sellers, these prices include shipping. Japanese sellers were usually selling the game for around $5-10.
Yep, that sounds about right.
If you want to get it for North America shippers, those prices range around $10 to $15. So,
that's not bad at all.
Because
I'd say like if you're interested in getting a card, definitely get it.
Yeah, because even though RPGs tend to hold their value pretty well, I think because of the fact this game was Japanese only and pretty obscure, it certainly kept demand. Therefore, the price is down on it.
And also, a lot of people in Japan that sell these games to anybody from the West, a lot of them are very good at not price gouging you.
Oh yeah, sure.
And also they're so nice, and a lot of them are like, I clean this up for you. Like a couple of Japanese sellers I bought from have actually given me like extra stuff in there with everything as well, which is really
cool.
nice. I think I got a tea bag from one of them.
Oh wow,
some green tea. Yeah. What was the other one? I think another one I got something, I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah.
But like some of them are very kind as well, and they make sure that it's very clean and all that. I bought from some American sellers. Well, it doesn't really matter what it is, but I bought some stuff that's just like, it's all like all yellowed and so.
Nope, I agree with you exactly. So so even CIB copies of this game are not that pricey. Again, North American sellers are a little bit more expensive because the game's already over here in the West. But on average, copies of this game, CIB completed box, sold anywhere from $8.25 to $25. So, not that bad. Repros obviously are going to be a little bit more expensive, and those are card only. I didn't find anybody who had taken the time to produce a manual or a box for an American release. So it's like card only from what I saw. Those are anywhere from $19 to $31.50.
Oh.
So on average $20-30.
Not bad.
Yeah, for repro it's not a bad price. So because but yeah, so anyway, this is a very interesting game. I'm kind of glad George brought it to my attention because it's like it's a very oddball game in many ways. So not a bad game, just different. So like I said, if you're the kind of person who enjoys obscure, weird Japanese style RPGs, this is definitely like a fun game. Otherwise, you might otherwise if you like old school RPGs, you might like this game anyway, but your mileage may vary. So I could not find which group actually did the translation of this ROM, but the translation of this game is pretty good. I
could find that for you.
I really only noticed a couple of errors. So
yeah, translation's pretty good. From what I understand, it is not 1-to-1, but it's like pretty accurate to
sure Yeah.
what the dialogue was in the game. So there's a decent amount of profanity and whatnot,
Right.
which is nice to see in these older games, I guess, because
Yes,
like
I'm very surprised
a
to
lot
see
of
a
those Japanese,
a 16-bit title.
yeah, a lot of those Japanese games actually did have some kind of profanity.
Oh, yeah,
and,
sure, yeah.
Mature themes,
Yeah.
so
Gratuitous violence, like, boob shots, etc., etc. So,
yeah, there's a lot of Japanese quote unquote mature games out there. So the one that is fully finished, the translation is by Aeon Genesis, and also credited to
yes, okay,
Hen. I haven't heard that second one.
I remember
apparently
that
there's
group.
an unfinished translation by Klepto Software.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Aeon Genesis, I recognize that name. They did a lot of translation work back in the day.
Yeah, romhacking.net is wonderful. If you ever want to find a lot of games to play, especially like RPGs or whatever, if you want to find something that will waste your time, a lot of time, you go to ROM hacking and see what games are translated fully in English, and then just be like, oh, this sounds interesting. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Nowadays, between like game FAQs and YouTube, you usually can find out how to play the game too. So, because
I
like,
mean, the games that do have guides usually are translated anyway.
right.
I mean, like, also think of it like we're getting PS2 games that are getting translated. I'm looking at PS2 games right now, and these are like 2016 stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's insane. Also, I need to work on Front Mission because I want to get to Front Mission 5, which is Japanese only.
Right.
And, yeah, that was translated a while ago.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think it's about everything everything I think of like this game. George, do you have any like final thoughts?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, thank you again very much.
Games are fun.
Yeah, indeed. So, thank you again very much for coming back on the podcast, George. It was great having you back. Like I mentioned before, George would be back like every now and then for like special episodes. So, I want to thank everybody who's backed us on Patreon. That can be found at patreon.com/the SNES podcast. I want to thank Corey and David this time for supporting us. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feedbacks, etc., you can leave them on our Facebook page, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. George, what are you working on these days?
I'm working on PlayStation Power.
Yes, it's back in a way.
Yeah, it's more than one way.
Yes.
I'm doing a bunch of video content, still doing the podcast, moved over to a new website that is pspower.games. So it's pspower.games. So that's a nice little URL change in the first place, and the website's really nice. But videos for the podcast episodes, videos of me playing the games for the podcast, so on and so forth, and just expanding and whatnot. I know Greg's kind of taken less of a role there, but he's still gonna come on a few episodes, just like I'm doing here on this podcast, and explicit content. I guess I should give that warning. But that's some fun stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad to have it. Yeah, glad to have it back. So, but anything else that you're working on that you want to like plug?
No, that's just about it.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank everybody again for listening to the podcast as always. I do want to finish off the podcast by making a small announcement. Well, maybe it might not be small depending upon how you look at it, but the announcement very simply is I'm taking a break from the podcast for a little while. this is, I'm not ending the podcast. I just want to make that clear. Just that there are some things going on behind the scenes that have impacted the amount of time I have and being able to devote to the podcast. And as Phil, the excellent Notes for Gamers is fond of saying all the time, you need to take first things first. So I am going to take a step back on the podcast and just put it on hiatus for probably about 2 months, give or take a little bit, I think, until after tax season's done with, because one of the factors definitely affecting this affects my lack of free time with my work being getting super busy between the coronavirus effects and also the tax season getting to full gear. So I'm just going to take a break on the podcast for a while. I'll keep people informed, through Facebook and also through my regular my regular submissions on Ferg's podcast. If you listen to Ferg's great Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, as to when the podcast will be coming back. Hopefully with the regular guest host, like when I do come back. Sorry, I shouldn't say guest host. I should say permanent co-host when I come back with the podcast. So you can still feel free to reach out to me if you have any suggestions for games that are coming and whatnot. Having said that, I am still have some irons at the fire for people coming to the podcast for special guest spots that I'm working on for a while now. So I may record those episodes if the people are available and around to record that episode. As a matter of fact, I probably would have already put the podcast on pause, except the fact that George and I were already planning to do this episode for a while now. So I wanted to at least get this out the door first. So anyway, I do appreciate everybody's support as always, and I will endeavor to come back to the podcast new and improved in a short period of time. So thank you again, everybody out there, for listening. Then thank you again, George, for coming on the podcast again. It was great to have you back.
Nope.
And one last thought. I'm not crazy about this game's title. I mean, Dark Half is fine, but it doesn't really capture the game's full essence.
What would you name it?
I don't know. That's a good question. The Light and the Dark, Twin Brothers, Twin Souls. How about that?
Twin Souls. Okay. Light in the Dark wasn't too bad. You workshopped that a little bit too. That's not too bad.
Yeah. So, because because the way the title makes it sound, it's it almost makes it sound like they're playing a character split personalities.
How about Murder Simulator 2000?
Done already. I'm sure there's an indie game available on Steam right now called that. So.
Maybe. Who knows?
But yeah, thank you again, everybody, for your support and listening to us, and we will catch you again next time. See you all again soon, hopefully.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Super power.